Here at Sun and Fun, we've come over to a booth called Loehle Coatings. But in the past, I didn't know that name Loehle, which is right on his hat, associated with coatings. I knew it associated with airplanes. And there are some pictures of airplanes behind us, and this guy had a lot to do with those. I'm Dan Johnson, talking to an old friend, Mike Loehle. We go back a long ways in this business. And Mike is the builder of those airplanes in the past, designer, builder, had a sprawling, huge operation in Tennessee at the Tullahoma Airport, which we all knew about for a long time. But then things changed a little bit, and now you're in the coatings business. So first of all, what are coatings?
Basically paint coatings. It was a process that I came up with for my own airplanes. I was never happy with any paint I put on fabric, so I always wanted to develop my own paint for my own use, making it flexible for fabric, metal, or composite. I traveled the country selling other brands of paint, sold it with our kit airplanes, but I was demoing our own coatings and got in a lot of trouble with customers. So when light sport was talked about, I called my wife Sandy and told her that we were basically out of business because we were selling single face replicas. And she said, well, I think it's time to bring the paint out. We talked to our paint the manufacturer of the chemicals for us, and it was all a go because they were understanding flexible technology. And from there, paint coatings is just something that we ended up bringing out to satisfy everybody in both the airplane industry and the automotive, street rods, that sort of thing. So we can supply paint we even had paint on the last shuttle launch pad.
Is that right? Pretty cool. All right, so this has gone a long ways for you, but I know you as an airplane designer guy,
right,
not as a chemist or something.
Right.
I mean,
I'm not a chemist.
How do you develop a paint?
You don't. I started out as a ramp tramp in the 70s at a Cessna dealership at Bowman Field in Louisville, and being a little type A mouthy German, wanting to soak up everything I could, I started complaining about the leading edges of Piper Aztecs. Even though we were a Cessna dealer, the leading edges looked nasty. And so I mouthed off about it, and one of the older guys said, well, you think you want to learn to paint and do that? I said, okay. So I kept trying to keep DuPont Imron on these Piper Aztecs, and I couldn't do it either. They would peel off in the rain and the
that's
ice.
That's one of the famous names in paint, actually.
It's tough.
It still wasn't.
Well, it had a body shop guy that ran a vocational school. It was a pilot around there, and Junior came up and he said, Mike, you want to figure out how to keep this Imron on here? I said, well, sure, tell me what we're talking about doing. It was the highest quality paint known in the world as far as shine, and I couldn't get it to stick to their primer. And at that point, he told me to use zinc chromate on bare aluminum, a light coat, and use their shiny paint over top of it, and it would stick. And sure enough, it started to do it, and all of a sudden the older AIs and A&P mechanics thought, who is this pump? Well, that gave me carte blanche in my own mind as an ultralight guy. I can mix brand A and brand B to see what it'll do to make it more flexible. My goal was to make everything flexible, and I'd never found a shiny paint like that brand. And from then on, I started working with urethane paints and plasticizers to make things this way.
So it's not so much chemical work, because you're not a chemist, but it was taking products that you knew about and rearranging them in new ways.
But the chemistry is the chemists behind the scenes are always working on flexible technology.
Are they? Okay.
So
that's something these guys pursue anyway.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I see. Okay.
That's the only reason I'm able to get small quantities of stuff, because my paint comes out of a building that produces two of the largest competitors in the world. I just happen to be able to get the raw material.
You can take a little bit off the bottom there, huh?
But in 1981, we brought the first shiny ultralight to Oshkosh. The airplane was a couple of days old, had never been test flown, and it was black with red, orange, and yellow on it. And long story short, it won all the hardware. I took it home, and that winter, there were cracks over the entire airplane.
Oh, bummer.
In the cold. I didn't know what was happening.
Because it didn't have this flexible.
Absolutely.
I see. Okay, so not because the surface is moving or something.
Not at all.
But because of conditions.
What was happening is in the auto field, rubber bumpers were coming out, and plasticizers were just being introduced. We brought the airplane to Sun and Fun the following year, loaded it with the cracks into the trailer. brought it down here, you couldn't find a crack, and it won grand champion, just like this guy.
Is that right?
But from then on, all I
taught you a
was,
lesson there, didn't
well, flexible technology. I told a competitor here yesterday, if he and I could ever get together with the rest of the group on fabric and make it to where we put our hands in this solution, pull it back like a rubber glove, we really have the ultimate for fabric airplanes. And that's what we've always wanted to do. Of course, I'm more, now I do as much with metal airplanes and composites.
Is that right? Okay.
As we do in the fabric end of it.
Yeah, clearly fabric is, you know, it's a very good wing surface, been used for years and years and years, and will continue to be, but it does move a little bit, so
Sure.
it needs flexibility because of actual movement. A metal aircraft, well, has a little bit of movement too, but it's as much conditions as it is movement,
And
right?
it's really funny, when I got into it, the more, like our airplanes had metal and composite on them, the kit airplanes, but I always remembered being at a large Cessna dealer, I joke with people, I'd say, when you're fueling 15, 2150s at a really busy flight school as a teenager, and you're on top of the wings, you're either thinking about girls or you're thinking about airplanes. On the airplane days, I would notice the paint was peeling in one particular place on the high wing Cessnas, and it was where the joints were riveted. And the paint is very thin when it comes across that edge.
I see.
And that's notorious in any industry, powder coating, automotive, aircraft. And what was happening is that paint would fail right there, and then moisture would get under and start peeling. So my deal was to try to make to where the rubber glove stayed over it, and it would do this.
That's where the rubber glove comes in.
Yep,
I get it. Okay.
So it's got to stretch. One of the big chemical companies on fabric said, you know, only their paint will last on an airplane. So there's no paint that lasts. It's all drying out the day the robot or the human gets spraying it. And they would argue, and I said, well, number one, why do you need to repaint your car after 20 years? Why is your John Deere line not look brand new to your house? All paint ages just like we do. So I said, let's not.
Yeah, right.
We just what we're
forever.
trying to do is put in enough flex agents or plasticizers to give it an extra 10 years before it does what they're.
Will it add that much time to it?
It all depends. UV is the biggest problem with paint. Of course, our airplanes anymore, they're not outside like they used to be. Cars are the same way. Custom $250,000 street rod, it's in a garage or a hangar.
Sure.
In the old days, cars and airplanes sat out, and the weather just beat them to death, no matter what you put on. So we're lucky that way. But my big thing with my paint is I wanted something that I could do in February in Tennessee and bring a prototype demonstrator for you guys to look at that was finished. Using a lot of the covering materials that were out there, you had to wait for perfect humidity to put them on. I couldn't do it. I mean, I paint when the rain's coming beside this tent, we can paint, and we've sold a lot of paint because we don't have a professional paint booth. We did a $750,000 300 knot Lancer in a conduit tent.
Is that right?
Covered in plastic.
Yeah, a lot of people think you got to have all the downdraft and masking and all this.
Well, you need
quite
to
an
mask.
elaborate thing.
You need to and fresh
air. Of course,
air,
the safety things,
but all my stuff is aimed at. I'm a home builder and an amateur. People say, well, how do you do this? I said, look, number one, I may shoot paint every 4 or 5 weeks. Body shop guys do it 2 or 3 times a day. They're the experts. I said, oh, I'm a home builder, just like you guys. So if you're refinishing your street rod or your Cessna 150 or 210 on your own, or your Blanca, your RV, your Lancer, your home built Fisher, we speak the same thing because we're probably doing it in a garage.
Yeah.
And that's what I'll tell you about, warn you about, and help you with.
So your whole coatings business is based on a home builder,
Amateur.
not doing it in a professional environment.
Absolutely.
Those guys already know what they're doing,
have
but
pros
you're helping
using
the
it.
other guys.
Well, it's been really humbling over the years. I did a cold call on the first call when we restarted the company last year. I went to Michigan and rolled in. They were having some trouble with certified covering with pinholes on fabric tapes. And I rolled in and they gave me carte blanche to show them my Wonder-Fil pinhole filler, my black UV blocker, and within 30 minutes they said, what's it going to take for us to do the rest of Citabria that way? And come to find out, the gentleman shooting the paint was 25-year-old auto body, motorcycle, airbrush, award-winning guy, and he said, we got the best paint he's ever shot.
Is that right?
It's very humbling. To this day, I've never had a complaint on the paint. Maybe we took an extra 2 days to get the paint to them, or we should have brought it out. for 2 airplanes before. We shouldn't have waited for lights for it. We should have brought it out earlier, because this rudder over here is over 25 years
Yeah,
old.
I'm reading
When
the
I
sign
covered
back
it.
there.
I called Mary to find out when we had that meeting, and she said at least it was 94, 95. We covered it the following year, and right at 24 hours in our unheated prop shop. Wood dust everywhere to show what we could do. But all my stuff, even the airplane we flew, the black one,
Yep.
was so new it still had fingerprints in the rudder, in the clear cover.
Mike, you have just full of a lot of history,
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
great
Too many
because you go
years.
back a long time. You've done a lot of different things. It's excellent. But now you've ultimately come to focus on all those things you did, and you learned, and you had good success with those. But all along the way, you were learning more about coating.
Right, absolutely.
And so here you are, really doing the thing that you're arguably the best at. So that's very exciting. Tell us how we can find some more information about what products people might need, how they ask you more questions than I've been able to ask. Where do we find you on the web, Mike?
Just LoehleCoatings.com, and there's one phone number now. It's my phone number. There's an email there, just with a chat. Shoot me an email if you've got questions. I'm really setting it up more of a mail order operation with shopping cart and so on, but I'm to answer direct questions. I'm left on earth to help people with paint. I know that for sure, whether it's my brand or other brands of paint that's out there.
That's great. Thank you for
Played
that
with all of
contribution. So you can find more about what Mike has done in the past. Lots of these airplanes that he has on the wall behind us here, I've reported on, and we'll continue to keep an eye on what Loehle Coatings is doing. You can find all that and lots of other affordable aviation on buydanjohnson.com. Thanks for joining Mike Loehle and myself here at Sun and Fun.
Thank you, Dan.